Yeah, great. Good. And please, a few seats up front. Boy, Larry and Rick, we have a great crowd here. It's a turn-away crowd. Larry and Rick will be outside selling lottery tickets after the event. I just want to let everybody know. My name's Jack O'Connell, and I'm the, I see my friend and predecessor, Delane Easton here. Delane Easton is the 25th elected state superintendent of public instruction. That makes me the 26th. I'm a public school graduate, so I can count through that. But Jack O'Connell, and my main task today is to welcome all of you, and really thank you for coming. This is, and here, you know, Rick and Larry schedule this. It seems like this is the third year in a row on the World Series game. I think they checked the baseball schedule for this. 2 years ago, I think the Giants were playing, and everybody walking around here had a little earpiece, I noticed. You remember that from before? But there must not be too many folks here from Ohio or Illinois, so we're safe. But thank you for coming. This has really become a cause celeb, if you will, and it's really happening because of the organizations in this room. Obviously, every great cause has a great leader, and there are no shortage here today, and you're going to have a chance to see a few folk. But it really is the composition, the makeup of the organizations that this group represents that really is going to make this program even more successful than it has been in the past. And what we're doing really is fundamental, I think, in a democracy. We are helping to educate and inform the body politic about public education in a straightforward, unfiltered manner, really making a connection to some of the key issues in our schools with communities. And so I just think that this is so laudable and so worthwhile, and very, very appreciative of the great efforts of this program. This is a show that's not rigged. We're gonna make sure it continues in a straightforward manner so that we can get the message out of so many of the good things that are happening to public education. And yes, some of the challenges that we have in public education as well, so that we can have a better informed, more enlightened electorate. And I think that's really what this is about. So my main task today is to be able to introduce the executive producer of this program, Larry Miles, who's here. And I'm really here because his wife, Marcia, was the chief legal counsel for me at the Department of Education. And I first said to Marcia when I met her about 15 years ago, Marcia, you have one task, keep me out of trouble. And she did that fairly well. So for that, Larry, I'm most appreciative. Will you please welcome the executive producer, Larry Miles. Larry. All right?
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Superintendent O'Connell. It's really great to have this room filled with such incredible people who have been so supportive of this program and our efforts. And certainly, Jack has been forefront in that, opening so many doors, and that goes without even acknowledging his incredible superintendency. We do have two superintendents in the room tonight, and we're going to be privileged to hear from former Superintendent Delane Easton a little bit later on this evening as well. There are a lot of folks in this room that I would love to acknowledge and spend a lot of time, and will to the extent that I can, but I think I have to really start by thanking our hosts this evening, the California State Lottery and Hugo Lopez. If we could just give them a quick round of applause. Let me, in a few minutes at the conclusion of my remarks, I'm going to allow Director Lopez to come up here for a few moments, but I wanted to say right out of the box that we would not be here either literally or figuratively without the assistance and the support of the California State Lottery. So this is a fine venue this evening, but much more than that, and much more important than that, they are our primary sponsor for our first full season, and we will be forever indebted. And in a few minutes, you'll know why I feel so strongly in saying that. Another person that I absolutely have to acknowledge for a moment is really the guy who all of you know, because he's probably called you 100 times over the course of the last 4 years. But Rick Lonnie, Rick, where are you at? Rick, Executive Director Rick Lonnie. I'm going to tell you in a little bit, some of the folks have heard this story before, but a little bit as to how we got here this evening. But central to that story is Rick, and he has persevered when I have said, okay, enough is enough. We've had 100 conversations that have begun with, if we don't get that money by next Friday, I'm out of here. And Rick has kind of managed to work us through those situations. And so truly, we are indebted for his perseverance, for his stubbornness, and a lot of other qualities that I won't detail to you now. But I am just privileged to, I have healthy self-esteem, right? So I'm more than happy to accept the glow when it's due. But in this case, I'm just kind of hanging in his shadows because he's really made it happen. So we're really, really thrilled to have that working for this program. There are a lot of folks here this evening who have volunteered on our advisory board. And the advisory board is really some of the foremost leaders in California education. And I would acknowledge all of you, but we really are going to try to get you out of here before midnight. But I don't want to diminish the importance of having the finest leaders in California education who are guiding us, who are giving us story ideas, who are opening doors for us. And so for all of those who have helped us on the advisory board, we are truly thankful for your assistance. And again, this is part of the team effort that has gotten to us here this evening. I want to also mention a couple of other things as well, and I'll dig deeper into that as we go on. There are some elected officials here this evening. My good friend Roger Dickinson and others are here this evening. I can't begin to identify everyone, but I want you to know that we appreciate the support of the community, not only the educational community, but the people in this Sacramento community, even though this is a statewide program. And you're going to appreciate that much later as we discuss it. Even though it's a statewide program, our home is here in Sacramento. And so when we get the support of our elected officials and our community leaders, many of you are here tonight, it really makes us motivated and inspired to continue this effort. We have a wonderful partner in KVIE. General Manager Dave Lowe is here, and we thank you for your leadership. Mike Sanford, you're going to hear from a little bit later on this evening. I am absolutely convinced that over the course of the last several years, that from time to time, they've probably had conversations at the studio saying, those guys are flakes. When is this going to happen? What are we doing here? But they have hung in with us. And they have worked with us, and they have been great partners, and we are so proud to have KVIE standing on their shoulders to make this program a reality. So Dave and Mike, thank you again. Jim Finnerty couldn't be with us this evening. He's our host. One of the things that I'm so delighted about is not only are they committed to the program, but they are passionate about public education. So we could have gone all over the state and not have found better partners to work with in this endeavor. I want to say just a couple of quick words as well. This is a paid political announcement. My good friend Jim Hopp is here this evening. He's the president of the Aerospace Museum of California. You'll see a little bit of publicity on your table about the Da Vinci exhibit, which is coming for 6 months in February. It's going to be a big educational event. Some school districts have already committed to have all of their third graders come. So I wanted to introduce that to you, to get all of you educators and superintendents and teachers thinking about that. It'll be at the museum, and it's a great STEM opportunity for your students to kind of understand the inventions of Da Vinci and how that ties in with what we're doing even today. So, finally, I want to talk a little about this overnight success that's been about 4 years in the making. Rick Lonnie and I served on the San Juan School Board for 8 years, and when we left it, we were very frustrated with the tone and the discussion involving public education. And we wanted to get beyond the headlines and the sound bites, and we wanted really to try to have the public understand the deep commitment of people who are working with our kids. It was our experience, and I'm sure it was Jack and Delaine's as they traveled throughout the state, that the people in our system really work hard, and they are passionate about trying to improve public education for the students of this state. But that message really wasn't being communicated. And so we had these conversations and said, wouldn't it be nice And the next thing I know, Rick Lonnie is making phone calls and calling people and calling some of you folks and saying we want to do this great program. And that went on for about 6 months, early in 2013. And lo and behold, you folks were supportive. You said, that's a great idea. We really do have to have a conversation about public education. And so this went on for a period of time. We actually got some support. Jonathan Raymond at the Stewart Foundation helped us out. All of the educational associations, thank you for contributing. We did a pilot episode, and believe it or not, we premiered the pilot episode a year ago, or actually 2 years ago, excuse me, Jack's right, 2 years ago in 2014, and we showed what a program could look like. And in that pilot episode, we had a great Teacher of the Year segment. We had a great segment on career technical education. And some of you may recognize the kind of superstars from the San Juan Culinary Academy who are probably hiding back in the back at this point in time. But I want to acknowledge them and their teacher for being with us tonight. Let them know how good the food was tonight. Would you please come on out? Thank you. Thank you. They were on our pilot episode of Inside California Education, so we thought we'd bring them back, you know, for the sequel. So thank you very much for your work tonight. Thank you. We had another pilot episode in February of 2014 in San Francisco with our partner there, KQED, and that was incredible as well. But that gives you an example of the work that's kind of gone on and the challenge of moving forward with this program. And as I said earlier, the commitment that took us across the finish line was the California State Lottery and the leadership of Director Lopez this evening. And so I do want to bring him up again in a moment, but that has really been the capstone that has allowed us to have this event tonight and to be talking to you about having our first full season. So let me just say a few words about what that's going to look like to you. We have been working on our full season, and even as we speak, KVIE has our production crews scattered throughout the state of California, and we are doing shows from close to the Mexican border all the way up to Oregon. I want to acknowledge Eric Knudsen, a teacher in the Sac City School District. Eric, where are you at? Stand up, Eric. And John Fleischman. John, where are you at? Just retired from SCOE, Sacramento County office. John? John is our resident expert on technology and adult education to make sure that we are on the cutting edge of these issues. And Eric is always giving us a great classroom perspective on all of these issues. So we're really blessed to have them helping us with developing some of the story ideas. So where are we at? What are we doing? We started out, we have a story on Common Core and LCFF, and we're going to communicate that story in ways that are helpful and informative to the people of the state of California. We're doing very straightforward issues that are important, like the teacher shortage, the importance of adult education, transitional kindergarten. Those shows are being worked on as we speak. We're going to be having best practices and celebration stories. One of the segments that we're very excited about will be following what we call, it takes a village to educate the kids, what we call our Day in the Life segments, where we're going to be following the bus driver who's driven for 20 years and 1 million miles safely. We're going to be following the cafeteria worker and the challenges of that job. And so we're going to get some insight, not only about the teachers and the principals and the administrators and the students, but also the support staff and the classified staff who helps bring excellent education to our schools. We have, on Monday, KVIE was down in Brawley doing a story on civic education that's going to be very exciting. We're going to be doing a story on character education. On Tuesday, they were in Hacienda Heights doing a story on adult ed and how important adult education is as we look at people who are trying to learn English, who are trying to get their GED, and the role that California education has for them to support those efforts. We have an exciting program that's being filmed today on career technical education in Flabob, California, the oldest airport in California, and Canyon City High School, looking at their career technical aviation and transportation programs, which we think is going to be really exciting. Of course, we're biased. Rick and I are pilots, so we'll really push that episode, and we're looking forward to seeing it. KVIE is going down to Corona to do a story on continuing education, because it's important to recognize that not every student fits in the same traditional mold, and we have to have alternative options for students so they can be successful despite challenges that they confront. And we also want to look at the really dedicated teachers who help make it happen for those segment of students. And we're going from urban schools to rural schools. We're going from Oakland to Turlock. We're going to large schools. We're going to be doing a segment on Kyberts and the kind of history of one-room schoolhouses and small school districts in California, because we really want to acknowledge the real breadth in California education. We'll have several technology segments, technology and TOTS. We're going to be having a program at Stockton about their impressive efforts to have improved their graduation rates using technology and other programs. So as you can see, this is exciting stuff. We're going to have about 50 stories or so that really present for the people of this state, statewide on the PBS affiliate stations, hopefully, on all of them, and even some that are not in California. Our pilot aired in Fairbanks, Alaska, and it aired in Denver, Colorado. So we think that there's a real appetite for this, and we're really excited about that. Mike Sanford, who you're going to hear from, just did a story about the teaching of Mandarin in Reading. So we're all over this state with these exciting programs. And I hope that you'll be talking to your friends, talking to your members, talking to your leadership organizations, and spreading the word out. Before I invite Mike up here to say a few words about our partnership with KVIE, I really do want you to welcome Director Hugo Lopez to the podium just for a moment so that we can acknowledge the special role that the lottery has here this evening. Director Lopez, can you join us just for a second?
Thank you very much. I will be brief. Obviously, you didn't come to hear me speak, but I do have one request. If we could have a segment to kind of help people understand that the lottery is not the be-all, end-all of all of education's funding woes, because I know everybody here, we hear it as well. But no, I just want to say that we're very excited with this partnership. When we met, it was clear that our missions aligned. We look very much forward to this and moving forward. Want to thank you for this opportunity. And as you can clearly see from our lobby, I mean, education is at the forefront of what we're here, and was the primary reason that the lottery was established. We will continue to do as best we can to provide supplemental funding to education. And that's the great thing about the lottery and about my job here. It's easy. We have such a great mission. Apart from my job, education is very near to me personally. My wife is a kindergarten teacher. She's also my teacher, I guess. I'll admit it. And most of my siblings are in education. So education is very near and dear. So again, welcome to this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. In a few minutes, we're going to be seeing what we call a sizzle reel. That'll just kind of give you whet your appetite for some of the programs that are coming up. And to introduce that, I'd like to introduce Mike Sanford from KVIE. As I said earlier, Mike and Dave have been wonderful partners. They have gotten our message. They are committed to the program. They've worked really hard, and it's been really a great opportunity to work with them and try to make this happen. Mike, can you come up and say a few words, please?
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Director Lopez. Thank you, Jack. Great to see you again. And thanks to all of you for being so supportive already for this effort. We're really excited about bringing Inside California Education as a weekly public television series to stations all over California. You know, there's so many people that have helped us just get this far. A couple more people from the KVIE team I'd like to acknowledge. Obviously, we've recognized David Lowe, our president and general manager, who has pledged to reach out to his fellow GMs all over the state and get them to carry this show on their station. We're looking forward to that. Also, Henry Wurz, our former KVI board chair and currently the head of our capital campaign, our 2020 campaign. We're raising money for KVIE with the express purpose of creating more content. So this fits in nicely with both what we're doing here and our overall mission to be the region's storyteller, and in fact, the storyteller for important issues throughout the state of California. I also want to acknowledge our series producer, Christina Salerno. Christina, in the back. Christina is with her husband, Adam, and their new addition to the family, Graham. Christina has been on maternity leave, but she'll be back in a couple of weeks. In her stead, our other series producer, Jim Finnerty, who's not here tonight, has been doing a great job keeping the momentum going for the series. The next and newest attendee of the public school system in California is being held by Adam as we speak. Well, I think this gathering tonight kind of symbolizes a perfect confluence of circumstances, the right timing, the right people, and the right venue, which is, of course, PBS. Since our establishment by Congress way back in 1967, we have been and remain the nation's classroom, available to 98% of all American households. And don't forget, that's for free. If you have rabbit ears, you can still get PBS. We've been dedicated throughout that time to entertaining, informing, and educating millions of viewers of all ages. Now, we're no longer the only producers of quality content. We recognize that. But unlike those commercial networks and channels, we are not compelled over time to change our focus due to shareholder demands, financial constraints, drops in advertising. We are supported by you, our viewers. And of course, you see at the beginning of every program, we say thanks. Of course, the funding support we receive from organizations and individuals and corporations is also extremely helpful. But the bottom line is we are not constrained by commercial metrics and constraints, so we are able to put on the kind of programming that is not subject to those circumstances. That allows us to maintain our editorial independence and maintain the high level of trust that we've enjoyed as the most trusted brand in America for over 12 years. That's why PBS is still important, and that's why we reach people of so many different ages. So where do we stand in our production efforts now? Well, thanks to the many great suggestions provided by many of you, we're well along on our track to produce between 45 and 50 stories that will appear in our first season's 13 half-hour episodes. As Larry referenced, we've also already been all over the state. A couple of the other cities that he didn't mention, besides Redding, we've Napa, San Diego, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chula Vista, Anaheim, Riverside, Fresno, Long Beach, schools in the Sierra Nevada, the Inland Empire, and of course all over the Sacramento region. Christina, did I leave out any notable towns? That's just some of many. In most episodes, we'll probably have 4, it's a magazine-style show, so we'll have 4 longer-form stories, about 6 to 7 minutes each, which is a heck of a lot longer than you see on your nightly news. So we can go into a lot more detail and analysis. And as Larry referenced, we'll have some great people features too, besides A Day in the Life or It Takes a Village. We haven't quite decided on the title yet. We will also have a regular feature called Education 101. And that's where we may be turning to people like you, some experts like yourselves, to help us answer and explain to our viewers some of the more complex issues in education and some of the great initiatives that are underway to make education more successful for children throughout the state. Now, our first episodes are going to be fed by satellite in late January, and there'll be 13, each one fed once a week. Right now, in terms of statewide carriage, our goal, of course, is to have stations, every station in California carry it. But PBS stations are kind of like herding cats. Besides carrying the regular Nature Nova Frontline, each one kind of sets its own schedule. So what we have to do is to convey to these stations that this is content that is meaningful to them. We think we'll be very successful with that. Right now we have Redding, Eureka, and Rohnert Park who have absolutely committed to the program. And David and I and Larry and Rick are going to do our very best to reach out to these other stations in the coming months and show them samples of this program, show them that we're visiting their communities and covering their school districts, and in fact, this is a show that will appeal to their audiences. Not just because it's covering what's going on in their region, but because there's some great examples going on in other parts of the state that their school districts, their policymakers, their administrators can emulate to achieve a greater level of success. But this is where you can come in. You can help us through your organization or your company. If you're from another part of the region and you have a PBS station that you are already supporting in some way, it never hurts to remind them. Call them up and let them know that you are supporting their station, and that in fact, if they wish to receive your continued support, they may want to consider carrying Inside California Education. That sounds like a veiled threat. Make it more of a positive approach. But I think once stations get a look at the program and they understand that there is strong local support from organizations, enterprises, and groups such as yours, or just individual donors, they will sample the program. And once they sample that program, they'll realize they want to put it in their schedule in a good time slot. So that's where we stand. We've got a lot of work to do before this program airs in the spring of next year, but we're convinced by that time we'll have good statewide coverage. Larry has already expressed gratitude to all our sponsors, but I'd like to also acknowledge the California Lottery and also all of you. You've done so much to get us this far. We're deep into production. We've got a long ways to go, but it's going to be a great show. And with that, as Larry described it, I'd like to show you our sizzle reel. So here we go. Support for Inside California Education is provided by the California Lottery, the Stewart Foundation, and these organizations and enterprises committed to supporting public education in California.
The first time I took it, I didn't like it at all because it was very hard.
They told us it was definitely going to involve more thinking outside of the box.
8th graders Riley Stewart and Sabrina Tosh are talking about Smarter Balance testing, a new and significant element of student assessments aligned to the Common Core state standards.
It is a more precise measurement of what students know. And so when you give, for example, the feedback to parents as to where their students are, you can really give a much more accurate reading than the older forms of testing.
In California, the Smarter Balanced assessments are given to students in grades 3 through 8 and again, juniors in high school. But not every state adopted the standards, and some states have dropped out.
This is a very, very important day.
This graduation ceremony in Pomona, California is not for the kids in the room, it's for the parents.
It's to be recognized that you would put forth your time in order to better your parenting skills.
These parents just completed a 7-week course called School Smarts, developed by the California Parent-Teacher Association. The course teaches parents the nuts and bolts of education.
Para mí fue lo que yo descubrí a través de este programa, a través de estas clases, que yo tenía una capacidad dentro de mí que si yo me proponía hacer algo, yo lo podría lograr.
Here in Northern California, parents meet at their local school for evening sessions once a week. The sessions are held in both English and Spanish.
Okay, bienvenidos otra vez y muchas gracias por tomar su tiempo en venir a...
But this action plan does not have to be large goals only. It can be little teeny tiny goals.
Parents really cannot become advocates for their children and for school if they don't understand how the system works. What is their role in the school? How do they do that? How do they feel the confidence to be part of their communities?
The Parent-Teacher Home Visit Project began in 1998 in Sacramento as a way to establish trust between parents and schools with a history of low student achievement. Now, the program is in 17 states.
As teachers, we step out of our comfort zone and we meet our families where they are, in their home, we like to say on their turf, so to speak. And that totally shifts the power.
Because I used to be quiet, and now I didn't used to raise my hand and actually answer questions that she asked to the class, and now I do, to that home visit.
He was going from lower grades and now is completely passing in my classes. The greatest benefit for me is to be able to truly, authentically get to know each and every child that's sitting in the classroom with me. There isn't anything better than that.
First of all, what stood out to you about the video?
In 2013, California began rewriting the lesson plan on governance with the local control funding formula. The new formula eliminates spending for specific categories. Instead, you have a base grant per pupil and supplementary funds for English learners, low-income students, and foster youth. It provided local boards with discretion to use funding to address local needs and priorities.
We have a quorum, and we have just one bill in front of us.
Accessing those state funds, however, requires districts to engage parents and the community in writing a local control and accountability plan. Nicknamed the LCAP, the plan addresses how state funds meet local priorities. The idea? Giving the community a greater say in district policies.
So we have to make sure that we address the needs of every student here in La Cañada, not just those that are going to Harvard, but those that maybe are taking the route of going to Pasadena Community College. They need the same level of support as all of the students.
This is one of 6 mobile dairy classrooms traveling the state, bringing the farm to the classroom for nearly 500,000 youngsters each year.
Are you ready to meet a special guest?
Today, the kids are meeting Snickers, a 5-year-old, 1,500-pound Holstein cow.
So Snickers has her tail right back there, and her tail has a very fun job. Her tail acts just like a fly swatter.
Then, the highlight, a chance to see and pet a calf. Instructor Kimberly Human says she's been managing these kid and cow encounters for 5 years, meetings that never get old.
I think it's absolutely perfect for me. To actually see the light bulb go off, that they can see a connection between an actual dairy cow and the milk that is in their cafeteria.
Lunch at the library started in 17 libraries in 2013. 3 years later, it's in 130 libraries up and down California. And that's the goal of this program, to bring people in with the free food, but keep them here for the books.
It's hard to come to a library and not notice the books. And most libraries in California have a summer reading program. What I have seen at programs like this is families walking out after having a meal and turning to a librarian and saying, well, where do we sign up for the summer reading program?
If you feed someone, they're going to be able then to focus on the reading that they want to do or the learning. We solve one problem and they may be that much more ready to be able to access the next thing. And the library's here to help with all of those things.
Start reading.
There's a lot of research about summer learning loss and the fact that kids who don't have kind of structured, fun, engaging activities in the summer lose learning, so that when they get back to school in the fall, they can be as much as 2 months behind the grade level reading that they were at before.
A promotional outreach to school districts called Summer Matters has been spearheaded by many, including State Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Torlakson, along with the Department of Education and the Partnership for Children and Youth.
Summer school no longer, we're not putting worksheets in front of students. We're not, drill and kill, rope. We're not doing any of that. We're actually allowing our students to open their minds and to tell us what they want to learn.
Keeping with the theme of summer camp, the rooms at Floyd Elementary are decorated more like cabins than classrooms. Here you'll find everything from a fake Hollywood film set to a room designed just for girls.
Why I like coming here is because we get to do a good education and read a fun book. Before, at school, I used to not like writing, and we write fun prompts, and it's helping me with reading because I used to be behind in reading, and now reading school helped me to be at my grade level.
Ashley Duncan is a first-year teacher at San Francisco's Bessie Carmichael Elementary School.
If we can do this by the end of the week, get to 30, Miss Duncan will take you to the park.
Ashley had no trouble in securing a job when she emerged from college. That's because Ashley comes to education at a time when California's public schools are finding it difficult to fill teaching positions. One report says California lost 82,000 jobs in schools from 2008 to 2012.
We're at the beginning of what's about to become an even more acute teacher shortage, but in the last year it became very severe in a number of districts and in some specific teaching fields: math, science, special education, English language development teachers.
Many districts have begun year-round outreach efforts online, along with seasonal job fairs to tap into the pool of those who might be available to teach. Everyone agrees that incentive bonuses, housing assistance, and mentor programs will help to not only attract but retain new hires. They agree, however, that it will take political will to address a problem that looks to be with us for some time to come.
LAUSD is beginning to invest more in the music repair shop by adding more staff, adding more support, because it is recognized you may have a great music teacher in the classroom, but without the instruments, then it's all for naught.
When instruments require some tender, loving care, they end up here at the district's musical instrument repair shop. Every year, some 8,000 brass, woodwind, or percussion instruments will pass through the shop.
We have a large variety of instruments, anywhere from your basic flutes, piccolos, to your stand-up basses. We have grand pianos. We have some really good grand pianos, some worth $85,000, $150,000.
Without providing music for LAUSD children, you wouldn't have classic groups like the Platters, who came out of LAUSD. You wouldn't have will.i.am of the Black Eyed Peas. You wouldn't have the Red Hot Chili Peppers or Los Lobos. You wouldn't have these titans in the musical industry who have charted just a forward direction in music without the experience they gained in K-12 education in LAUSD.
Support for Inside California Education is provided by the California Lottery, the Stewart Foundation, and these organizations and enterprises committed to supporting public education in California.
Now, did you know that all of those great bands came out of LA Unified School District? That was such a fun fact for me. So those were just little appetizers, samples. Obviously, the stories themselves are longer and more detailed. And I think what makes a program like this work, or any public television program, is we talk about the policies and the processes. We talk to the experts, and their input is invaluable. But ultimately, it's about the people. It's stories about people. It's about the parents, the teachers, the students, everybody whose lives are impacted and improved by all the great efforts that all of you are putting forth in education. So for that, we're grateful. We continue to look for your help, and we appreciate everything you've done so far. Let me turn it back over to Larry, and again, thank you for all your help.
I think you can see why we're so excited. That's just a thimble of the great stories that exist in public education. I want to introduce a great friend of our program, and probably a great friend of many of you in the room as well, former Superintendent Elaine Easton. She's been a great help to us, and we're so glad to have her here this evening.
Well, good evening. It is great to see you all here and supporting this marvelous effort.
I was privileged to serve on the KBIE board some years ago, and this is a dream come true for me, honestly, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. And there are a whole lot of people right now taking bows in Sacramento about all they've done for the schools lately, when the reality is we are in really, really pretty dire straits. Think about the counselors. Well, you know, I wouldn't have gotten to go to college if it weren't for my high school counselor. Well, tonight we're 50th in high school counselors, 50th in psychologists. We talk about social and emotional learning, but in fact, there's nobody there to support the teachers. Oh, the teachers? They're in the largest class sizes in America. And by the way, some of them have 10, 12, 14 languages spoken in that class. The truth is that we are dead last in librarians. I love the picture of kids going to the library, but tonight, most of the schools don't have librarians. They have volunteers sometimes that are parents that show up instead of having real librarians. And as a result, old antiquated books get left on the bookshelves, and the kids don't get invited, as I was by Miss Firth, to read all the biographies of women that were in the Britton Acres Elementary Library. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And when you see the difference between a classroom with 40 kids in it and a classroom with 20 students in it, you see a fundamental difference in the quality of education. The finest teacher in the world with 44 students would have a challenge. So I'm in San Francisco at San Miguel Elementary School. In the second grade, I was one of 44 kids. And then we moved to San Carlos. My parents bought their first and only house. They bought the little house that cost more because the schools were better. And so I got to go into Mrs. McClaus's class, and I was the 20th student. And they said, we're going to have to open another second grade. Now all the second grades have 20. So I came by my interest in class size reduction very honestly. I went to a Santa Maria school, and I did visit schools in all 58 counties, and I'm proud to say that I learned so much by doing that. And I went to Santa Maria one day, though, and this little boy, Latino boy with glasses on, he looked at me very seriously, and when I asked him how this class size reduction was for him, and he said, oh, it's very good. She has more time for me, and he pointed at the teacher. And he said, and it's much quieter in here now. We can get more done. The truth is, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and we need to paint a picture for California. A picture of these great children who can in fact become wonderful doctors and lawyers and merchant chiefs. But remember the next time you're flying that somebody else's child is the pilot in that cabin. Somebody else's child is the machinist who machined the parts in that wing assembly when it lifts up so perfectly and you land safely. Somebody else's child is the mechanic who, in fact, took that engine off, overhauled it, and remounted it. We hope that person was well trained. And somebody else is in the air traffic control tower, seeing you and your family safely home. So we have to tell this story from preschool up, I hope, eventually through graduate school. Because the truth is, California is starving its children education. Yes, we don't have mandatory full-day kindergarten in California. That's just wrong. And a bunch of other states do have it. And we don't have as much preschool available as you would find if you lived in Oklahoma or Georgia. That should make the native-born Californians pretty nervous. So at the end of the day, I just say we have technological challenges. We have some amazing, gifted students, but they're working on antiquated machines, or the machines don't work, or the school's not wired, or they go home and they don't have broadband. And so these kids, it was in the New York Times, sometimes they go to school on Saturday or Sunday and they sit under the eaves in the rain so they can get access to broadband. This is just wrong. And California was once number 5 in per pupil spending. We were tied with New York. And when we were in the top 10 in achievement, we were in the top 10 of investment. Now we're in the bottom 10 in achievement and the bottom 10 in investment. If you adjust for the cost of living, we are 42nd right now in per pupil spending. So don't let anybody pat themselves too hard on the back over LCFF and over the additional resources. Yes, we climbed up from 50th, but we are not where we need to be. At the end of the day, my favorite quote is by Neil Postman. He said, "Children are a living message we send to a time we will never see." That little baby is a message to the future. It's a message to a time we'll never see. Some of us in this room are living in a time that our parents did not live to see. I don't know about you, but I'm so grateful to mine for sending me to great public schools in California, to the great University of California at Davis, and then Santa Barbara. And then I got to teach at the community college. Every level, the CSU, every level of this system was fully supported when I was entering college. And today we've starved every level of education in California, and it just ain't right. You want to know where the next Silicon Valley is going to go? It's going to go where there's great education. We have to remember the best economic development program is called education. The best crime prevention program is called education. The best welfare reform program is called education. Educate them and you won't have to incarcerate them, put them on welfare, pay for their unemployment. And so this is a picture that's being painted for California. And I cannot be prouder to be a member of KBIE, prouder to be associated with these wonderful people who are making this happen, because it's going to open some eyes in the state of California.
We want to thank everybody very much for coming. You can see this is a great team. You're certainly part of it. This is going to be very successful. We want to go national. We'll see you next time. Thank you.